My name is Mary Stack. I'm a licensed clinical social worker with Tender Touch Counseling Center in McDonough, Georgia. I'd like to spend a little time talking with you today about coronavirus grief. As the end of the year approaches and it looks like we're going to experience another extended time with the pandemic, but as we too are looking at the past year, making our resolutions, thinking what we want to leave behind, what we want to take forward with us, I thought this might be a time to look at what losses we may have experienced, what grief we might be feeling in regards to the pandemic. What I heard as a young adult this time of year, that you can clutch the past so tightly to your chest that you have no room left in your arms to embrace the present. If you think about it, the past has come and gone, the future is yet to come, so really all we have is the present. And if we're holding on so tight and letting ourselves experience the losses of the past year, then we may not be able to see the bright things that lay ahead or overcome the things that we've been going through. You may have experienced with the virus sudden and prolonged illness of yourself or of a loved one, or the death of a loved one or friend. Also, people have experienced loss of employment, loss of income, loss of workspace. I know we here at Tender Touch worked for a period of time from home doing telehealth. And that was a big change, learning to adapt to a change in workplace, not have your co-workers around you. As well as people with children have had to help them adjust to learning from home, using computers, doing things that they don't normally do during the school day. And then we all have experienced lack of football, which in the South is a big thing, as you know, and the lack of opportunity to gather together in our faith communities, for those churches that are no longer holding in-person services. And as a result, we may find ourselves feeling a decreased sense of safety, a lack of predictability. What we thought was normal is no longer normal, a loss of control over ourselves, our environment, a loss of freedom. We can't go where we want to go, when we want to go, with who we want to go with, and a loss of security. And along with that, a loss of a day-to-day routine. And then with the change in working environments, a loss of attachment to our workplace, the people we work with, the places we may go, going to and from work. And altogether may cause a loss of our sense of self. I know for me, I really miss going to Kroger, because I can talk to anyone that stands still. And that used to be one of my pleasures, is to be able to go and do my shopping, talk to people along the way, smile, have them smile back, compare notes about what's on sale. And with the virus and having to wear the mask, first of all, you can't tell if anyone's smiling or not. You can't always understand what they're saying, and they're not close enough to hear you. And so it's really been, it sounds simple, but that's been a big loss for me. I'm an extrovert, and having people to talk to and be around. Nothing as simple as that, but over a period of time, it wears on you. As a result, I found myself grieving just the lack of social contact. And I realized that grief is not just about death, it's also about loss, whether the loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, a loss of a home, loss of a pet. And that it provides us, working through grief, provides us a framework for how to cope with what we're going through, what we're feeling, and find a way out of it to be able to continue moving forward on our journey. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was a Swiss-American psychiatrist that did a lot of her work with people who were terminally ill. And in her work and research, she found that most people she came in contact with that were going through the terminal process had a set of stages that they went through until they were able to come to acceptance. And she wrote about this in her book on death and dying. Later on, she came to regret that she didn't clarify that the stages are not meant to go in any particular order or be experienced in any particular time frame, but just rather people can go in and out of the stages. They may repeat them. They may go from anger immediately to denial, then to acceptance, back to denial, but that it's a process. And she identified these 5 stages of grief as denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And later on, as she continued her work, she went on to include any major loss in your life experience as being a part of the grieving process that would utilize these stages. And it wasn't just because of death, and that whether loss in our health, sudden loss in our income, in our work opportunity, our relationships, significant events such as 9/11, most recently the bombing in Nashville, things that just create a sense of loss and feeling overwhelmed. A little more definition to the stages. Denial is basically not being willing to accept the reality of what has happened or what is happening. In the case of the pandemic, early on, we heard things like this was a test tube disease that was sent over, but it can affect us, that we don't need to wear masks or practice social distancing. And then most recently, staying at home for the holidays, is not going to keep us from getting them or protect us from the virus. We should be able to be with our friends and family. And I know that that's a particularly difficult issue with some religious communities that really want to gather and worship together, but don't necessarily want to utilize the guidelines. Anger is just a reaction to a feeling of loss or what you feel has been taken away from you. We still hear a lot. People feel that having to wear a mask, having to shelter in place, having to practice social distancing is really a taking away of their personal freedom. And they should be able to do what they please, when they please, where they please. And you may have seen on social media the videos of people taking out that anger in stores and other places where they've been asked to wear a mask. Or just people express it out loud, I'm tired of wearing this boom, 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 boom mask and having to stay at home. I'm sick of everything being closed, not being able to go to the gym, not being able to eat inside a restaurant, not being able to go to my favorite sporting event. Bargaining is trying to figure out a way to do what you want to do within the confines of what you're being told you can't do. So I don't need a self-quarantine. If I think I've been exposed, I can just practice social distancing, can I? Or how can I have this virus if I'm not having any of the symptoms? I must be okay. And that in using the bargaining, it's kind of a partner to the denial. You're just trying to make something true that isn't true. Depression is like an overwhelming feeling of sadness, lethargy, and just a pre-acceptance, if you will, that things are not going to be the same. With everything going on, with parents having to balance work schedules, school schedules, changes in working environment, it can be overwhelming. Example, maybe someone's feeling like they can't work, their kids can't go to school, they can't go anywhere they want to, so just why bother? And people tend to isolate and just shut down. And binge watching our favorite series stops even being relaxing. Or I just don't seem to have any interest in doing anything. I'm so tired all the time. And finally, acceptance. It's a sense of knowing what we need to do to protect ourselves and others from getting the virus. But something I heard on NPR that tickled me is, I have to wear this mask, but if I think about it, it's going to keep my face warm in the winter. It's finding a way to tolerate better something you may not want to be doing, but realizing it just is what it is and you have to go with it. But coming to acceptance is where our power lies, that we can find control in accepting. So once you accept, then you can begin to build a framework of how to continue coping with what you're having to go through until you get to the end of this journey known as the pandemic. Grief doesn't always have to be a negative thing. There are positive effects. One is a feeling of gratitude for the frontline workers, for the people that are taking care of our loved ones, friends and neighbors that are pitching in when they are able to, appreciation for our relationships and those people working together with us to maintain our personal contact, even if we can't be in person doing it, but also being willing to help others that are in the same situation or be the recipient of help from someone who knows what we're going through and doesn't have to have an explanation. They just quietly do what you need done, knowing that it will be helpful. It's important as we cope with the virus and the pandemic that we pay attention to our feelings, what's going on around us, how we're reacting to it. This may be a time to begin journaling if you're not already doing that, just to write down how you're feeling, to be able to go back and look at it, reflect on it, think about our strengths and our coping abilities. What have we done in the past in similar situation that helped us get through? But to stay connected to our friends and our family, this is where social media is a godsend, whether through Facebook, FaceTime, all the other different ways people interact on social media, to make sure to keep up with your friends, your family, to let them know how you're feeling, but to support them in their feelings. And then to create adapted routines. If this is how life has to be for a while, then let's find a way to make it more bearable, more fun. And then for me, what's been important is to limit my news diet. What I read, what I see on the TV, what I hear on the radio. So I'm not constantly being bombarded with new and differing stories about the COVID and the pandemic and what's happening with the vaccine, but rather just, keep it to a minimum. But to remember the journey, what you've gone through, what you may be facing ahead, so that you can utilize what you've been through to help as you continue moving forward. And then to take comfort in creativity. I've had the greatest time playing with the cooking in the kitchen, finding new things to make, testing them out, taking pictures and posting them on the internet or sending texts to my family. Here's my latest creation. It's just been fun discovering ways to use food that I hadn't thought of before, or seasonings and spices, and just coming up with some delightful things. But also take up a hobby, take up a craft. Something you wouldn't normally do because you may not have had the time in the past to do it. But most importantly, to remain focused on the present and those things you can control. And as you adjust, as you feel more in control, your feelings of grief are likely to lessen. And you begin to feel more positive, more hopeful in going forward. Now, if you're having trouble coping with your grief over the changes that have been caused by the pandemic, consider seeking help from a mental health provider. This doesn't mean that you're weak or not able to take care of yourself, but more, you might have just gone through more things than you can handle at a time, and you just need someone to help you gain a sense of perspective on how best to handle it with the tools and the coping skills that you have. We are available to provide this type of counseling, and our information is being provided for you to contact if you're interested. We would welcome the opportunity of working with you. If you found this to be helpful, we would welcome your feedback either way via the social media so that we can improve the services and the information that we are trying to provide. I hope you have a good rest of your day and good luck.